Recording
You're
time.
recording right now.
Yeah, I started. Like I haven't recorded the last 9 minutes because I just talked about my uni. So yeah.
I talked about life.
All right. Probably start this in the background. All right. So last time I do have made some notes. I'm completely unprepared. I just need to figure out how to organize my desk right now. All right.
Mhm.
So last time we talked about, I think we talked about Brawl. Let's see, fine. Okay. So we talked about Brawl and Spam or Poke compositions. Just for was there are there any questions to any of those two styles? I don't know how the scrims went. What kind of comps you played?
Mm, I don't have questions right now. I can't think of anything right now. I also don't really remember Scrum well because we had ping issues and I think we had like 1 or 2 maps that we played like with a normal ping.
We only had one.
It was one, okay, yeah, because the other one, because the enemy team was got delayed to the Scrum, and I think we did okay. I can't even remember. I think we did okay.
We could have done better.
Yeah, we could have. Yeah, we could have done better. But we played also with a ringer, so it wasn't the full team. I don't
Okay,
know.
that's fine. I just wanted to see if there was anything.
Can't
Yeah.
think of anything right now. Maybe questions will pop off while you explaining or like talking.
All right. I'm just gonna go over some of them a little bit. Just real quick. So in general, Rhino or Zarya, I think, can work both. I got both like Brawly compositions. We go over like what all teams are actually playing and all that stuff later on. Um, so yeah, for example, one thing, Sojourn, you can kind of play her in all the comms because apparently she's just that strong. So you can play like Sojourn Reaper, Sojourn May, or something like that here. But I just want to go over like standard brawl to start. So yeah, usually how this works is we talked about this in the last bot, like we had a bot review there. But I'm just want to go over this just a little bit. So usually when you have the Zarya, you don't really need the Mei, so then you can go like Zumbra maybe if you have a Zarya, just because yeah the the Mei just works really well with the Rhine because if you have a wall up, the Rhine just pushes forward and his swing does like a lot of damage, his AoE and all that stuff. Zarya usually like also when you play with the Mei, you can play it a lot faster. Usually if you Mei wall someone and it started to fight with the Rhine, it almost always is like a secure kill right away. But with the Zarya, because you don't really have a lot of charge, you don't really do a lot of damage. So that's why you usually see the Mei only been played with the Ryan. Sometimes you see it played with the Zarya as well, but I think more often you will want to play it with the Ryan. If you play Zarya, I think the Zumbra is really strong. Yeah, Zumbra is really strong in general. So Zumbra, a lot of teams play Zumbra in like more comps than just a brawl. Usually Zumbra is like a dive character, but she also works very well in this brawl. Um, how to play this is usually you want to like stick together and yeah, you just make sure that your Zarya stays alive and then go for like picks like Zorba goes for a hack, for example, Mei goes for a wall, and then Ryan or the Zarya like pushes forward, tries to get the kill. You have usually if you're playing against Brawl especially, usually what you can do is your Reaper can TP in and get some Zarya bubble. Usually the Reaper wants to TP to the side, slightly behind the enemy team maybe, so like enemies
I
like
have a question.
sure.
So when I play Sombra or like playing Sombra in a comp in general, who's the target I should focus with hack? Like who should I hack primary?
Oh, again, it a little bit depends on what you're playing. But because Zombra can just like hack and stay in this, like in the fight, usually, let's go with this one by one. So in the fight, usually as a Zombra, you want to hack the target that you want to engage on. Not only in dive it's important, but also in brawl the same. So if you go forward as the brawl, you probably either want to hack someone who is a little bit far forward so that they don't have an disengage. But very good is also hacking the Zarya, because that means if the enemy plays brawl, obviously. If the enemy like hacking the tank usually is pretty good, because Zarya usually is the only peel or is the only peel here. So if someone's like too far forward and you hack the Zarya, she cannot bubble herself or the teammate who is too far in front. And also, as Dumbra, you do like, I don't know, 30% more damage on people you hack. It's do more damage to people that you hack. So hacking a tank is usually pretty good. And if it's like between fights, if your team is still setting up, or if the enemy team is setting up and you're like on the defense and you scout, and like for example on King's Row, for example, and then you're like in the like let's say second point, and you're in the window right behind the point. I don't know if do you know what I mean? Like you have to choke point on second, and then you have this window on the top left. This is from like
yeah.
defender's point of view right now, and then you have this
Uh-huh,
like
uh-huh.
corridor on the left.
Mhm.
You can like, for example, sit on the top, and then when the enemy goes through but your team is like not holding choke, for example, then you can just look for a hack, like annoy the enemy backline, shoot them a little bit, maybe make them use some abilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, just constantly be trying to farm your EMP is kind of important. And yeah, hacking is usually in the fight or when the fight starts. It's you hacking a tank can be quite deadly, as in like you can kill them. But also someone just out of position, you can scout that while you're in this, and then you hack them, and then your team hopefully can follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it also depends on the situation, of course, but usually you kind of can hack people as soon as you get it off cooldown, just because the time that you need to hack, you obviously don't shoot, but because of the damage boost you get for shooting hack targets, it kind of evens out. So if you like shoot someone and then your hack comes off cooldown, you can like reload, hack them, shoot them again, for example. Also, yeah, it just it's really annoying if you get hacked all the time. But yeah, back to this brawl example. So the enemy team is like is like E here. But enemy team is like, let's say in this general direction, so your Reaper goes behind him. He doesn't need to go for like a huge flank, like somewhere over this direction. Just like being behind them so that they have to turn around, and then you should only do this when you have your shift up thing. But yeah, that is really good against Brawl. If you're playing against Dive, you usually want to hold back on your bubbles so that you can bubble your Lucio, your Reaper, even if it's necessary, whoever the dive goes for. Yeah, just in general. And then yeah, again, you want to stick together and like play together.
In like comps, you mostly want to like stick together as brawl as much as you can, right? In like plays 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're playing against brawl, like if you're playing against Mirror or like another brawl comp, it is the most important part is that you engage together. Because we had that when we looked at the bot, for example, where our Reaper Zombra went for an off angle, which was really good because Brawl is very weak against that. So if you go for an off angle, like go for a little bit of flank, that is very hard for a Brawl team to react on. Also, I just realized this can also be an Ana here.
Okay, Bab Lucia Anna. All right.
It's Bab Lucio or Ana Lucio. The Bab usually is better in the Brawl, and you see a lot of teams when they play the Zarya play Bab as well. If you feel more comfortable on the Ana, you can also go for that. And you have like with the Nano, you can Nano your Reaper, you can Nano your Zarya, which is really strong. So yeah. But usually if they play Ana, they also play a brick. So yeah, but that's a different kind of style, and that's not really that much brawl. Usually, if we play Ana brick, it's usually like with the dive that we will go over later, which seems to be pretty strong right now. Just because yeah, Bap has Exaboots and his immortality and his shift, so the Lucius is kind of enough to protect the Bap and to also speed around the Zarya. While if you have the Ana, she can't just go on high ground and like create kind of like a corner, right? So usually you want to play around corners. If there's a high ground somewhere around you, that creates like if you jump up, that creates this corner like naturally, which is really strong. Okay, enough about brawl for now. Yeah, but yeah, usually you want to go in together and you want to play together usually as like a 5-man like death ball. It just goes around. But yeah, I just wanted to finish that thought from earlier. If your Reaper Zombra go for flank, that's fine, but you just need to make sure that your Zarya and your backline, or your backline, as in like Papalucio Zarya or Papalucio Ryan, that they are also able to go in. Like if they're not being able to go in, it's based like you go in as 2 and you're on a flank, which also means that they cannot like help you. So it's all about making sure that you can all support each other. That makes sense. All right, I make this on red now because I put spam poke in red, so I'm just gonna not go too far. So with the spam poke, I think we said Larissa's more of a brawl character at the moment, but she's also not really been played right now. So it's usually, and we also don't really see that a lot, but still like only place we really see that is maybe Circuit Royale, where we see the Sigma compositions. And usually like Widow, Ashe, Sojourn plus Hanzo or Zumbra, but I'm not gonna put the Zumbra in right now because she's technically not. It wouldn't really fit in this composition too much, but yeah, Widow Ashe Zumbra, Widow Ashe Sojourn. Oh here, that doesn't help with the Zumbra Sojourn. Sojourn. And then you have usually like a Zen and Bap. Some people play Ana here too. Anything else? We don't really see Mercy. Mercy would maybe work too. Maybe she will get buffed at some point, so I'm just gonna put her here as well. Yeah, the way that you usually want to play this is one of your snipers plays with the Sigma, and the other one plays with the support that is not playing with the Sigma. It's a little bit weird because depending on what heroes you actually do play, it depends a little bit who wants to play where. It's just like the important part is you have a 3 and a 2-man. Usually the 3-man is a Sigma. And then plus one of the DPS, one of the healers, and then the other 2 play on a little bit of an alpha angle. Not really flanking. So if you go into like Circuit Royale, for example, we set that up earlier. Nope. I can't find this now. Ah, fuck. I am not in deck.
Welcome to Circuit Royale.
Honor is all I have left.
Welcome to Circuit Royale.
Just because it's like the only map that you play this composition on, and it's a new map, I thought it would be nice to go over this. Alright, so usually everyone just kind of plays on this high ground, right? I probably wanna there we go. So let's say you play Sigma with like a shield either here, because the problem is if you play the Sigma here, then no one has like rotations. So if you play Sigma here, that means like that people who are playing inside here, like a Zen or a Hanzo, I don't know. If they want to like rotate, the Sigma can help like shield them either like across or behind this corner. If the Sigma plays here from the beginning and then someone is in danger over here, then they're already in danger. They can't use that. They can maybe go here, but yeah, it's just like if there's a Genji here, for example, then the Sigma can't help them. So I would say in general, maybe have the Sigma here. And then you can decide if you want to push someone who's like taking the stairs and stuff. Yeah, so let's say Sigma, and then you have I would maybe have a Hanzo, maybe a Zen in here. Widow can take an off angle either with the Sigma, she can play on low ground, she can play on these stairs. There's probably a sight line where you can abuse that there's stairs, which is here, kind of. So if you play here, then you can like close the corner by going right side and up, and then it's harder for them to shoot you. But you need to be aware that Widows stand on top here. So sometimes people stand here, and then you have almost no rotations if you're playing here as Widow. So maybe this can also be a nice sight line. You can grapple up and all that stuff. Yes, but what I want to say is that you probably want to have like, let's say Sigma, Zen, Hanzo, maybe Widow here. Ana can play behind the shield. She can drop behind with the Widow. Also, one of the advantages of Sigma playing on top here is when he drops, he can shield this corner, which is really strong.
Yeah, makes sense. That's good.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant with having like two groups. Like some of them play on the right side a little bit. You can use this. You can use here. You can inside the Hanzo can Sonic it and all that. Yeah, not really much you can do here. As soon as the car pushes somewhere around this area, so if it's between the corner and the car, you probably want to give this high ground up. Because they can force too many angles on you. Like they can be inside there. Like if you're here, and the car is still here, or maybe right around the corner, this angle is still a little bit dangerous because the enemy tank won't push up until here, because that way he would be separated. So he needs to be somewhere around cart. So this angle is not protected by a shield or anything like that. So Hanzo can easily, what's it called? Take advantage of that. This is a very small room with these storm arrows, and just get like a lucky pick, maybe lucky headshot. Zen can shoot things through there. Also, Nate, if it lands somewhere in the door, it covers a lot of there's no protection from it, so you can't push up here, which means they can only come from so many angles. Let's say just like here somewhere, and just let's even say up until here they can't go into this corridor, so they can only be here. Someone can come over here, so you need to be aware. Like Genji, Widow can grapple up there, I think. So they can usually, this is one box, this is and this. So, but it's all in front of you, right? As soon as they push the car until here, they can take a little bit more high ground up here. They have more high ground here. They can come through here. They can slowly take this high ground. So that's why you want to, because you're playing Sigma, really slow composition based on picks, you want to give up and play this corner. So usually when you have a corner, 45 angles degrees is the angle that you want to have a Sigma shield on everything, and that way you can protect most things. You can also have it like this, but then Widow, for example, can take this, or Hanzo if the shield is a little bit angled, because then I can take this and stuff. Also the what's it called, the statue here. So car pushes up, and that means you fall back, and then you can, if no picks have happened, obviously, you can take this corner, and then someone can play here. Here, there's also a mini there behind you. I don't know, was that not a mega in the beta? I feel like that was a mega. People can also take this high ground here, or if you have to fall back further, you can also take this high ground where there's another corner here. And people can stay inside, obviously. So there's a lot of different positions people can take again, and that's why I want to As Sigma, probably hold this corner, maybe peek a little bit. Not too aggressive because people can be on top and just shoot you from the top. So you need to be aware of this high ground there. On the other side, if you're attacking, you probably, like, if you don't do any weird threats over the top. I think they also patched it, by the way, because I think
Yeah,
I
it doesn't
ringed
work. It
for
doesn't work.
someone who wanted to do it. Yeah, if you're attacking, you want to, like, take as many angles as possible while still being safe. So again, you have a bunch of opportunities. You can, like, take this, take, like, this space and shoot up top here, grapple up, and all that stuff. This high ground can be quite nice, but you need to be aware. I don't think there's a good rotation. And might be a little bit, but the thing is that you have to go up, and then you're very open, and to go back inside, they can probably still shoot you, but it's going to be very awkward for you to shoot them because of corner advantage and all that stuff.
Yeah, this high ground is kind of tough. I played on it in comp. If you stay
Yeah.
there, you either die or you full hold them in spawn.
Yeah. You can...
That's,
Yeah, you can take this position at some point, especially if, like, one of the snipers is down. You can take this for a lot of pressure. But otherwise, you probably can come through here, shoot them from this angle, maybe go a little bit further and take this side. But yeah, it's very hard because it's very...
yeah, it's in the open.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, in general, this point is just very corridor-like, right?
Mm.
And then you have, like, here something and here something. And then on
Mm.
the top, but that's kind of it. Yeah. So you just
Yeah.
kind of have to make, yeah, you have to, yeah, force the enemy to make mistakes. You can also send someone to push the card a little bit further, because if the card is that far forward, then, yeah, people can take this side, like this angle. Then you can also, with your tank, push up the high ground and start pushing them off the high ground. Like, if there's no... the enemy team doesn't get any picks, you don't get any picks, but you can probably still get this high ground, but you need to make sure that you have, like, grasp and probably, like, wait, 700 is I think is the shield, so you probably want to have, like, 450-ish before you go up, like 60%-ish. Yeah, if the enemy falls back, then you take the high ground. You make them that they can't use the... like, that they have to give up as much space as possible. So if you take the high ground behind... oh my god, can I click? Hello? If you take this high ground, that means that this is very hard to hold, because I think this is spawn, so this is not a thing. Yeah, it's very in the open, there's not much cover, and you probably want to send someone on high ground here, and then pressure people out that are on the statue, because they are pretty far away from the rest of the team. And then you would just slowly but surely make sure that they get less and less angles, less and less positions. So you, by taking high ground, you force them off here. You go a little bit forward, take the stairs that are behind the camera right now. Make them go off here. That also means that they can't stay here because there's no cover anymore. While your Sigma is slowly pushing forward, while your backline is slowly taking good positions. Up until you get here, which is going to be a little bit tricky, and you need to use ultimate, because people will probably have this high ground, which is really hard to force people off. You can do that again by, if you push the card forward, so if the card is then somewhere, at some point it's over here, because they have to give up space, they can't hold this line, because there's no cover from this side, then usually they can't stay inside here, because if you play Sigma, he just does way too much damage in this side of the room. And yeah, what you can do is, so people are gonna be up there, and then you also do the same thing. You, like, take this side, you make sure that people can't stay on card, that they have to commit more resources than you to actually be on card, because they're gonna be further away from their backline. You can take these stairs, because people can't, like, if it's somehow possible, taking these stairs is really strong, because again, people can't see you here, so they need to, like, give up this high ground to actually shoot you. So if your backline is here, like a Widow, your Hanzo can maybe go here, like play with these, with you maybe not here because it's a little bit far forward. But yeah, if you take the statue and then slowly rotate towards the right, yeah, And that way you just get more and more space more with each passing second. Basically, you just kind of need to make sure that you don't get picked, but at the same time, like put pressure on the enemy team. Yeah, obviously you can't put the pressure up all the time. So what I said is you keep the pressure up, you take more angles, you take more space, and you keep doing that. But you need to make sure that your Sigma has his cooldowns because he's the main source of push, right? He's the main source of threat, like as in like positional threat. Like he pushes the card, but in order to do that, he needs to get support. He needs to have a shield. He needs to have his grasp. So when he doesn't have that, that means no one really peeks, or you only peek when you think you're safe and all that stuff. But you need to make sure that your Sigma stays healthy, has abilities that if the enemy team starts to focus him, he can either fall back or just like grasp and stay in maybe, and then the rest of your team punishes them because you have the advantage and shit. But yeah. I think if I could talk about this map too much, it's gonna be an hour just this map. So, yeah, this is like kind of how you want to do it. You want to just keep up the pressure, take more space if there has been no kills. Obviously, you also want to go for kills, but you don't really have this like pressure of the Orisa pull anymore. That you can go for like pull stone or pull like widow body shot, headshot, and maybe even Hanzo storm arrows and all that stuff. You don't really have that anymore in the game. All right. I should have just gone back to the lobby, but it's fine. Okay, so we talked about the brawl now. All right, let's go over the last composition, the dive. So I made some notes, which is so first of all, what do you want to play? You have the Winston or the Diva. It seems like both are very very viable options right now. And then you usually have Tracer, Genji, although no, not Genji. Usually you have Tracer Sombra, but some teams again play Sojourn because she's pretty strong right now. Why is she strong in Dive? I will go over in a bit. Or the Genji, who plays very similar to the Tracer, I think, in this competition now. We'll also go over this in a second. And then everyone just kind of plays Ana Brick. There is not much you can play with this because if you play Zen, you're basically a glass cannon and it doesn't really seem to work if you play like, especially against something like a Zarya comp because she just has 2 bubbles now. And they just survive this. Yeah, glass cannon seems to not be working as good right now. So usually, or almost always, you see the break. Some teams play this with Lucio, not because of the comp, but more because if they play against some Zarya Lucio compositions to speed around their tanks and their backline, because that way they can just run away from them. Yeah, that's kind of the only reason I think, or that. And you still have some kind of peel, you can still like knock people back with Lucio, so that's nice. And you have a defensive ult, which sometimes is also very nice against Trap, for example. Yeah, but let's say you're playing against it a mirror, you don't need the Lucio, the break is a little bit better, you have the AoE heal, you have a little bit more utility, a little bit more healing output, I would say, in general, and you don't really need the defensive ult. Like, if you beat as dive, then there's not much gonna happen. But if you rally as Brick, then against the dive specifically, Brick ult is really good. Because armor... Oh no, that was armor. That works differently now. But it's still pretty good. Alright, so, I made some notes. So, there is a different dynamic now in Overwatch, so this does not only apply to dive, it applies to all the compositions. Since you don't have a second tank, usually the second tank or off tank was there to mitigate damage when you are resetting, right? Or like to mitigate damage in general. So especially Matrix as a supporting diva, I would say. So as a supporting tank, yeah. Means that your Winston goes in and you can Matrix him in if you want, which means he can use more abilities while he's in the fight. But then when the fight goes on, you don't really use Matrix. You use Matrix then again when you want to disengage. And you can't really do that anymore because you only have one tank. I mean, you can still do that, but there's no one having like any profit from, or like any like they don't really profit from having a diva or what's it called, sustain. So the diva is more like a taking space tank now instead of a supporting tank, because well, there are no supporting tanks anymore. So you never really want to take extended trades. It's very much a hit and run at the moment. So people go in, make sure that they can get out, they don't commit, and then as soon as they think, when we do commit now, we kill something, that's when they commit. So they play around, force out abilities, force out positioning, and when they think they can kill enemies, that's when they commit. They don't commit earlier because in Overwatch 1, you could have like soft commit, if that makes sense. You soft dive, you go in, force out some abilities, but a lot of people go in, like 2 or 3 people, like the Winston, the Tracer, and the Genji. All 3 of them like kind of go in, do some damage. If they don't kill anyone, they go back with the Matrix. But now, when you go in and you don't get a kill, and if you try to go back, then you get just killed, because people will just back up, make sure that they survive, and then they kill you, or they shoot at you. Then they commit when you are out of cooldowns, and because you don't have a diva that soaks up all that damage, all that commitment, you don't really want to take extended trades. So you kind of just poke around, and then as soon as you think you can force them to run away or to kill people, then that's when you go. As in like run away. Yeah, well, maybe a little bit a bad word here, but yeah, it's like you want to force out that the enemy gives up positioning when you go in, while you don't die. That makes sense. Until you can go in with killing people. It's not often where you can go in the first fight, or like first thing you do is you go in, commit, and you kill someone. That's not the case anymore. Also because you have like less damage without Diva, Winston combined. Alright, so how does this play? Your main tank, so he needs to make sure more than in Overwatch 1 that, so your tank needs to make sure that when he goes in, or when they go in, that he is always in LOS of his support, because there's no off tank anymore that can support him or make him stay in the fight longer. Tanks have a little bit more health now and a little bit more sustainability, but if he goes in, like let's say Gibraltar, second point you're attacking and your Winston jumps into the plane, in Overwatch 1 he has a chance to get out if the Diva follows him and matrix him out, but in Overwatch 2 I think it's less likely that he gets out, just because he's kind of alone at that point. And it's hard for like your DPS to follow up to, or your supports, because and this is a very very excluded or very special case, because in the plane there's almost no escape. It's like kind of a kill box just in this plane. But you can say the same about like Dorado first point, like when you jump on high ground and your supports cannot see you, or the enemy Winston like bubbles you, then if the enemy has any kind of CC, you're probably dead, because you don't have a diva that can matrix most of the damage that comes in after you get slapped or something like that. So you really need to make sure that when you go in, you definitely survive. Yeah, so my hand running is atrocious. So you need to make sure that you get support. That's kind of the bottom line. And obviously, if that you can get support, let's say that your healers, that your supports, and maybe your DPS, that they can follow up, that they can heal you. Yeah, because sometimes you just get unlucky or whatever. All right. That's kind of one of the main things. Also, there's not much appeal but when you play Diva, you can kind of decide whether you want to go in or you want to like if the enemy plays it faster than you, you don't need to commit. So if you play Winston, usually when the enemy goes in, you also need to go into their backline because your peel potential is almost non-existent. But if you play Diva, that's why you kind of see her a little bit more. If you play the Diva, that means that you can decide in whether you want to go in. You have to damage because the missiles and the primary fire does quite a lot, especially if your DPS, like let's say you're all on the same page. If your DPS follow up, then usually you can trade. But you can also decide to okay, if I commit now, then we will get hit harder than the enemy. So we can maybe get their Ana, but if we go in, then we lose both our Ana and our break. But if you play Diva, you can decide, okay, maybe I'll just stay with my team and make sure that we either survive or even a better scenario that the enemy committed while not being able to kill our supports, and then we just kill their tanks or whoever committed on their team. That's why you see kind of a lot of Diva right now. Your backline doesn't really change much towards Overwatch 1. You break your honors, they stay together, you play around corners, you make sure that you're as hard to kill as possible. So yeah, it's very much like Overwatch 1. Alright, coming to the DPS. From what I saw, watching Owl, the Tracer has a similar playstyle to like an off tank in a way. So the Tracer is doing a lot more shadowing of the on the Winston. I'm gonna say it's not the same as a off tank. It just has some of the off tank. How do you say that? Like she plays more an off tank than she did in Overwatch 1. So she's more the supporting character in the dive. Meaning she's shadowing the Winston a lot. As in, you are kind of on the same path as the Winston on the fight. So let's say there's a fight. Usually it's like your team, so team 1. And then let's do a different color. You have team 2. And then usually there's a... So in Overwatch 1, I would say the Tracer can go both sides. She can either play with your team or like control flanks, make sure that the team stays safe, or she can be in the backline. So she can both play on this side and on this side. Regardless of where Winstons and Divas and Zombras and Tracers and all that stuff, where they play. She can just kind of do whatever she wants. As long as she kind of, obviously she still has to communicate and coordinate with the team, but she can kind of do, like, kind of play wherever she wants. If it's communicated and stuff. But in Overwatch 2, it's more like wherever the Winston plays. So if the Winston, or the Diva, let's say, so if the tank, I can't play T. Let's say just Winston. So if the Winston just plays with the team, like on this side in front, and the enemy Winston, let's say, is here, and the Tracer probably doesn't want to go into the backline. She won't get much done. There's no one who can help her really, because the Winston kind of committed to being on this side. So the Tracer probably shadows him here, maybe here. If the Winston goes in, then the Tracer probably wants to play on this side too, help the dive. And she just kind of wants to make sure the Winston is supported in whatever he does. And you don't really go for like individual traits that much. Sometimes, so this is an exception. If the enemy team plays a very similar comp, or if the enemy team plays a Brawl plus Tracer for some reason, some teams do that. You can also, as the Tracer, just counter their Tracer so that she is checked, and then you just kind of 1v1 her, and then your Winston goes in with your Ars DPS, which is like Genji, Sombra. You see that sometimes, but usually it doesn't happen as often. So the Tracer is not really doing her own thing as much, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Asking you, Misa, specifically because
Yeah.
you're the one who's playing her.
Yeah, I finally understood. Yeah, I noticed it right away when we played. I couldn't get any value out of what I did because I was mostly like in the backline and trying to like one clip someone, while my Winston was probably somewhere else, and the whole team like peeled right away.
Yeah.
For that one support. So it's not really possible to do like your own thing. You kind of have to like, I don't know. You have to do that what you just said, like
Yeah.
play like behind your Winston, like or with
Mm.
your Winston, and yeah, kill the same target. If they have Tracer, yeah, I would go for the 1v1 so Tracer doesn't one clip my backline or something. But mostly, yeah, play with the divey tank
Yeah,
or
it
like the tank.
also it also usually helps. So the tracer is usually either it's kind of similar to Overwatch 1, so you still want to check or like contest the
Check
flank.
your... Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
you do if you're not contesting the flank, then you usually just play with your tank. And in Overwatch 1 it
yeah,
was like you contest the flank, you play with your tank, or you go for an individual play. And you don't really do that
yeah,
as much. You kind of
yeah.
only do that when
Totally,
there's
not at
like
all.
when you like yeah, it's just like in very developed fights where stuff is like going crazy and no one has any idea what's going on. That's the only time Tracer really gets value from being, uh, being Tracer, as in like being able to
Yeah.
to kill, separate people and stuff.
Mm, mm.
Um,
I feel like it's also very hard to kill some support if they're playing very stacked. It's really hard
yeah,
to kill someone alone.
the problem is now that let's say you get distracted for a second, that means that passive kicks in, right? And then they all of a sudden
Yeah, the passive.
have 20, 30 HP more, which at the start maybe doesn't sound as bad, but if you do that
Mm,
2 or 3 times, that means that they have basically 300 HP, kind of, and it just
yeah.
gets it just gets really hard, especially if you have to like deal with other stuff. So if you go in and then anyone really peels and you have to go away, that means that their supports are like safe and they don't really have to worry. Then don't even need to use any defensive cooldowns apart from maybe like a brick package or something like that. But yeah.
Mm-mm.
Um,
Yeah, and also like Tracer's damage got nerfed, so yeah, it makes
yeah.
it even harder.
Yeah, so you more likely are going to like help your tank, like your Winston or your Diva,
Mm,
to like kind of peel, quote unquote, or like focus whoever they are focusing. Like if the enemy
yeah,
team goes in first and your team decides to, okay, we want to make sure that they don't kill anyone, then you help them not kill
yeah,
anyone. In Overwatch 1,
yeah.
it was more like a passive making sure that they don't kill anyone by going into their backline, sorry.
Into that backline, yeah.
Yeah, but now it's more like you just kind of want to focus whatever your team is focusing, so you don't really go
Yeah.
for your own plays.
You don't do your own thing anymore, yeah.
But this thing of annoying the backline, being annoying, going in on your own sometimes, that's kind of what the Sombra is doing now.
Yeah, that's still yeah. Sombra does that. Like Sombra's like probably like she kind of switched to the Tracer being annoying in
Yeah.
the backline.
Exactly. Especially like obviously again, if your team goes in, you want to hack the target that your team is calling out, especially in dive.
Mm.
Also you can like call out whoever you're going to hack, and your team goes in for
Yeah,
that target. That
yeah,
works
yeah.
too.
Mm,
But yeah, you kind of want to be annoying. Like you're kind of taking the tracer spot and being annoying on the backline just because you can
mm,
stay invisible while hacking.
yeah.
You can kind of chain hack, so they always have to be around. They always have to be worried, right? And people
Mm,
don't really have to be worried about the tracer at all the time right now, at all times, which was in Overwatch 1 kind of the case if the enemy plays a tracer. That's now the Sombra spot, I would say. So Sombra kind of took over this. And yeah, you kind of want to be annoying in the backline when there's not a commitment happening. So when there's no commitment, as in your team doesn't go in, because again, when you commit, that usually happens once, and then either the enemy team is dead or your team is dead. So you need to make sure that when you do commit, that you don't have to retreat because you win the fight. Yeah, or sometimes obviously like if it doesn't go well in the start of the fight, you have to commit so you just don't get so you don't bleed out. So the enemy has the advantage, and at some point you need to make a commitment, and then rather sooner than late, if you feel like the enemy's taking the has the advantage and it's gonna press it if you don't go in. But you need to
mm.
make sure that everyone's on the same line. And yeah, if you don't do that, so if there's a commitment, you just focus what like help the dive, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So you
I have
just
another
kind of
question.
yeah.
So I had this on my comp game. It's not really like in Scrim, but like I played Sombra, and the team was kind of like resetting. It was on Ilios on the with where you can like boob off people into the tunnel, with the point in the middle.
The
So
well,
I went to
it's called
yeah,
well
it
because
was
it's
well.
well.
Yeah, it's
The
well.
thing in the middle is also called well. Just saying. That's why the map is
Okay,
called well.
It's well. Yeah, I was playing on that map, and the team was resetting. The enemy team was resetting, and I was just like in the back line, constantly like maybe hacking the Arisa, shooting her a little bit, and then I translocated away into my spawn where the health pack is, on the stairs. Is it a bad thing to do that? Just like hack and like shoot them as much as you can and go away
No,
while they're still resetting?
no. If they're resetting, like you have to obviously for your straight Zombra, if you have your translocate already set up, that's probably the best thing. So
Okay.
you don't get caught out. So you win the fight. You put your translocated like on your supports if necessary. Like if there's some like health pack around, you just put it on your supports. So if you get low and you have to TP out, that they can like help you right away, right? So that's also one of the places where you can always put your translocator around your supports. Or usually you can. Anyway, yeah, your other thing apart from this, it's kind of your second primary target is build your EMP, like EMP builds.
Yeah, EMP,
So
build up fast and
yeah. So
team fight.
usually what you can do is if the enemy is resetting, you don't really need to hack a support. If you hack a
Yeah,
support, that means that they will heal less, which you don't care about. You just want to have your MP. So if you hack a tank, shoot them. The supports heal them. You can shoot the tank even more, which
yeah,
is
I was
great.
mostly hacking the tank and
Yeah.
like pressuring that tank, like I'm in your backline, be careful. So
The
like
enemy
that,
is like resetting or setting up, but it's like in the very early phases. You can just like even in the enemy spawn doors, like you can just try to hack a tank. You can do it while being invis. If they don't seem to respond to you very quickly, you can even like you can shoot. But you can also with this hack while being invisible, it gives you the opportunity to, if the enemy expects it and is like turning around really quick, you can TP out right away without even going out of your invisibility, right? So that's
yeah.
quite nice. So yeah, you can just go for that, especially because you really want to build up your MP.
Okay.
For Genji, like if you want to play Genji, because Genji
Ah,
seems
no,
to be
I
decently
don't
strong.
play Gengu.
And not you, but like I am talking to the whole team,
Okay. When we play Gengu, all right.
Yeah, if you play Genji usually plays like similar to a Tracer now. So you also do not really want to play so you don't really go for your own stuff. You don't really go for backline pressure that match. You only go for it when your Winston also goes in for it. But if your primary target is like do damage, do as much damage as possible before anyone commits, so that if someone commits, you can hopefully finish off the target that you pressured out for in the beginning. If the enemy team commits first, you can have your Winston pressure out whoever or your Diva. If you do decide to pressure them out first before you go in, can help them too. But again, if you're like on your own, especially on Genji, which was also the case in Overwatch 1 a little bit, if you're like alone, you kind of need a little bit more attention from your supports, I would say. So Tracer can always recall double blink out of danger, but Genji is, if you used his deflect already, you only have your dash, and people can still, since it's very linear, kind of predictable, it's a little bit harder for Genji to take that role. But the upside of Genji is you have Blade, which seems to be really strong, especially because if you play like the dive versus dive, people usually play Burik. She doesn't hard counter you that much anymore, and there's no defensive ult against the Blade. So yeah, that's why Genji, you see sometimes Genji been played. Last thing, Sojourn. Sojourn seems to be very strong right now, and we're already kind of going into what is actually been played. So what you can do is you can, because of your right click, you can at some burst enemies down, or like burst enemies even if you don't hit the headshot. If you hit a body shot, it's similar to the pharmacy comp. If you hit a body shot, that still means okay, someone's low, we can just all like kind of go in, especially if it's like in a mid fight where the enemy break doesn't have packs anymore, and maybe the Ana used her nade already, and if you go in then it's very likely that you'll be able to kill someone. If you even if you just body shot someone with the right click, which is really nice. So that's why you see Sojourn a lot, because you have this like one-shot potential while also having this consistent kind of damage with the primary fire, right? And then her ult is not massively strong. It's pretty strong because you have the piercing things, like the piercing ability, especially if you like play with a Zarya Graph. That's why you also see it with the Brawl. People are like clumped up, so you don't even need to aim that much with the Sojourn. Also, Nano Sojourn can also be a thing. So all the strong characters right now, Zarya, Ana, they work very well with her. Even Genji and Tracer to some extent, because you can follow up on people who got body shot by her, right? So yeah, Sojourn seems to be pretty strong right now. And also, one of the other reasons is her leap out, because that means you can take more aggressive off angles. For example, what we talked about on Circuit Royale, if you do take a little bit of aggressive position and the enemy wants to punish you, you should only take this aggressive position in the first place if you have your slide jump thing out. I forgot what the ability is called, but yeah, you always have your slide out, and you should always have that when you go for an aggressive position. Because that way it's really hard for the enemies to counter you. It's also not as predictable as like Widow Grapple Out or Hanzo Leap, because you have this time where you're on the floor, where your hitbox changes, and then you can decide to jump as well, or not jump and be in cover as well. So Sojourn seems to be very strong in almost every composition right now. She's naturally, I think I would say she's a spam character, but again, she works well in dive, similar to a pharmacy, as I said before. So she works similar to a pharmacy, but in Brawl, she can also work nicely because of how the game plays, where it's like the game is just a little bit slower than Overwatch 1. You poke a little bit more before you go in, and you wait for opportunities, and Sojourn can create a lot of opportunities. So yeah.
Odin is so confusing to me because her primary fire is projectile, and then her secondary
Yeah.
fire is hit scan.
Yeah.
It just fucks my brain up, man. Not gonna
I
lie.
have the same, but I think you get used to it at some point. And to be fair, I think your primary fire is similar to like Hanzo Storm Arrows, right? You just kind of
Kinda, yeah.
you just throw that into the enemy team. Obviously, if you have good aim, that will put a lot of pressure on the enemy team too. But I think even if you have average aim, Sojourn, as long as you like kind of try and focus on the right clicks in particular, you do you are very threatening, especially in a team environment. In ranked, I don't know. Obviously, if you have really good aim, really good mechanics, Sojourn is also very, very strong.
Yeah, because I always forget her secondary fire is actually hit scan, but I'm so into this projectile at first because I'm mainly using that. So I turned up my shot, and then I think, oh, it's projectile, so I have to like aim a little bit different, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's so fucked up.
Yeah, I think you need to get used to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't really play her in competitive because I don't know. I just suck at the hero. I'm gonna lie, but like you play soldier similar to like look like a soldier.
Yeah, I would say yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Similar, not necessarily the same, but yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily the same, but like similar playstyle. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of how do I say it's similar. I think it's from the positioning and stuff, maybe a little bit more similar to Hanzo. Yeah, I think Hanzo, Sojourn, Soldier right now are very like positioning wise kind of similar.
Okay.
Yeah, with Hanzo obviously you can take a little bit, you can take high grounds a lot easier. You can just climb them up. With Sojourn, you don't really want to use her shift to just get high ground because you again really want to save it for going out, or if the fighters want to chase, but you don't really want to use it as a mobility tool for just getting high ground. Usually you just want to walk up. Similar to Widow, where you don't want to grapple onto high ground, you can usually just walk onto high ground. Most cases at least.
Yeah, most cases.
All right. I think that I talked a little about dive. I talked about a little bit about Sojourn, how you can play around her if you do want to play her. Usually, I'm just gonna name a few comps people have been playing, which is like again the Zarya. I said this before. Zarya usually it's like Sojourn right now seems to be pretty strong, and then Tracer Genji, or Tracer Sombra actually, and Bap, and usually when you have the Zarya wants Lucio. This is the first comp. Then you have the Diva, or you can also play Winston. It plays very similar. Diva seems to be a little bit more that she can decide what she wants to do, like a lot more how do you say that?
Is it a little more like a DPS? Like a
No,
hog?
you just have now you just have more
Options to
yeah,
do what
you have
what you
more
want.
options,
Either
exactly.
let your backline die and you dive in and kill their backline,
Yeah.
or stay a little bit more with the team and fight within the team, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I talked about this before a little bit already.
Mm.
Again, Tracer Sombra, and then here usually like with the Diva you want to play Ana Brick or with the Winston, and then yeah. So these have been played sometimes. Like if you want to play Ryan compositions, which I guess Rice would maybe prefer some maps. And we actually see this. Then you usually have like a May, and then even here you play Sojourn. Sometimes you play the Reaper. And then you have usually Bap, Lucio, like standard. Yeah, we talked about Winston, but you only really see it on Circuit Royale, so I'm not really putting that in because you don't really see that. These are the 3 compositions that we see most been played. I'm purposely not talking about Kiriko because she's not available in rank. Our teams haven't played her yet. I assume she plays somewhat a bad role if you play her in Brawl. But I can see her also maybe played in this position here, instead of the Ana in the dive. Just because, although she seems to have decent amount of healing, the Bat will still be better in the Brawl, I think. She has similar abilities apart from maybe the shift where you can TP to your teammates. But you don't really need that because you usually play together anyway, so the Bat will probably provide more healing, and with the immortality maybe even more utility because the immortality has the it doesn't cleanse, but it has the possibility to stay up longer if you put it around a corner. And so I kind of only see her in dive. I don't think she will replace the brick, so she might be replacing the Ana. Maybe it will also force a completely different meta. Maybe with a Orisa, I can maybe see where you have a lot of denials, like with the Orisa's E, her shift. Then you have the cleanse for Kiriko, and then you play like Kiriko Zen, something like that with the Orisa. That could work. But because we don't have any idea, we can only play her in quick play, where stuff is not really communicated. It's hard to tell. But maybe I would my prediction is Orisa, Sojourn, then Kiriko, and then maybe Sombra, maybe a Dash, Hanzo, something like that.
Everything there is probably like spammy.
Yeah. Although, which also has the opportunity to go Brawl because Orisa, again, is a little bit more brawly now with her E and yeah, her ult as well.
Mm.
All right, let's talk about push maps. I'm gonna go into a push map for that because it's gonna be very hard to draw this. And yeah, I don't really want to do too long because we have been talking for an hour already. If you have any questions, obviously, you can ask them now while I'm doing this, or you can ask them at the end, of course, too. Let's go into New Queen Street. Because I think that this is this map kind of is combines the other two still. All right. Unfortunately, I can't go higher, which is really annoying. But yeah. Okay, we talked about... I'm just gonna go over this really quick, what we talked about last time. So, in the start... have I already? In the start, on each of the push maps, you have a high ground that is very... I'm just gonna call this zone the neutral position. Just I called this the same last time, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So neutral position. It's like when the ball is somewhere here. Not the barricades, but more likely the what is it called? TS 008 or something? I don't know. The bot.
The robot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
TS thing, right? But yeah. When the map starts, you usually want to have good positioning for the first fight. So usually it's very unlikely you're gonna get this high ground because both teams are gonna be at around this at the same time. So it's the only accessibility to this high ground is usually towards these entry points, and you don't really want to fight in any of those because it just gets very scrappy. No one has any advantage, and it's a 50-50. You can obviously say that it's always 50-50 because everyone has the same like starting conditions, but you can increase your chances of winning the fight if you take good position. So for example, let's say you start on this side, then usually you want to have like your supports somewhere in this area at the start. So if the enemy team comes from this top side here, that they can go around the corner. If needed, take this as cover. I think there's a mini inside. There's a mini at least here. So I don't think there's a mini here. There's a mini in this room. I'm not sure though. Anyway. So you want to take this high ground. Usually your tank probably wants to take maybe, because they usually have mobility, Winston, D.Va you probably want to play on this map. You can even play Ryan, but yeah, I think D.Va seems to be very strong. Winston usually been played on control maps. So if you play D.Va, if you usually want to like maybe take over this high ground, even a ball can do that because we have seen some ball plays. Also an owl, or just be aggressive, like take this position like on the high ground, obviously, so you can scout. You can take a little bit further, wider angle if you want to. All right, so usually that's the first fight, and it depends on what the enemy team is playing, how you want to position, what you are playing. Usually, I would say Dive is pretty strong at the moment, or like Sombra Tracer in general, because that means if you have a D.Va, a Sombra, a Sombra, and a Tracer, that means that you have 3 players who can kind of go onto the bot in the meantime when stuff is happening. So that's pretty strong. Yeah, and that the Sombra Tracer D.Va dive seems to be also pretty nice because, again, usually the Tracer doesn't want to be as much of a flanker anymore, so she can peel for the backline, D.Va can peel for the backline. Even a Sombra, who should usually have a TP somewhere, like here, maybe here. So if your Sombra is like going, first off, she like runs here, maybe between those scouts, what they have. And then she can also like ping and stuff, back up if needed, go high ground, scout from this side or scout from this side, hack them from behind. If she gets pressured out, she has a TP here. Or if the team gets pressured, she can also TP out, and with the TP, help the team as well. So it's a nice advantage. You have a Sombra as well. Well, it's Tracer, which is also one of the reasons you don't play Tracer that aggressive anymore. If your Tracer scouts and is like in this aggressive position, like maybe not here, it's kind of not as aggressive, but like here, maybe not on top right now, but yeah, going for the flank, basically, it's going to be hard to peel for your team. And peeling seems to be actually pretty important, even though you don't have an off tank right now. Alright, so, I'm just not going to say you win the next team to fight or the enemy team wins the fight. I'm just going to say if either team wins the fight, I'm just going to use blue now. You get to push this barricades. I think, or you get to push. I don't know. I'm just gonna use blue for this side because this is blue. Oops. So yeah, blue wins. So blue plays here. Gonna put it like this. You push the you push the barricade, but it will not go until here, or maybe I think it's a little bit further around the corner. But yeah, it won't go until the first checkpoint. TP. So you're probably gonna get it up until like maybe this corner here, or the winning team will. That means if you all stay on card, or if some of you pushes forward, you will, in both cases, have a very disadvantaged position. If you decide to all stay on the barricade, which is probably going to be here. Here's the checkpoint, by the way. So the barricade will somewhere be, let's say, in this area, maybe even further, but it's not going to be on a checkpoint. That means if you decide to stay on card, maybe go a little bit ahead or something like that, that still means that the enemy team will get control over this room. Whoever's on card cannot see into this room. So it doesn't matter if your support take this high ground, or if your diva, or if your tracer, or whoever takes this, that means they won't get any support. Or you need to go forward, or they need to give this up anyway, and then you're back on the low ground, and the enemy team can play on high ground and has a very advantageous position here. You could say, but why not just go forward then? Because there's a second high ground here, which also prevents attackers from just playing this for free. So you can't just push the bot to the first checkpoint in normal cases. If you, I'm always talking about if you're evenly matched, so it's not like you are a lot better than the enemy team, or the enemy's a lot better than you. So the barricade will somewhere be here in this area. That means you cannot play here, like you don't want to play here. I want to play here. And you also do not want to be here when the fight breaks out. And you also don't want to play here. So all of this area is just really bad for you because there's so much high ground surrounding it. Which means, as you said, I think if one person's on the bot, it moves the same speed as if 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 are on the bot. So one person pushes the bot, the others can look to maybe get some stagger picks, maybe get an opening pick. That is still possible. But as soon as the enemy is regrouped and is going to engage on you, that means everybody needs to back up. People on the barricade needs to back up. If you don't get a pick, that is. So if you don't have an advantage before the fight starts, after the first fight, so the second fight, before the second fight starts, you either need a massive advantage, as in you get huge staggers, the enemy just kind of feeds. I don't know. You just get maybe one pick is even enough. Maybe 2 picks. You still, so you push it, and then the enemy comes in. That means you back up, you take advantage positioning, and let for where the next fight is going to happen, which is probably around where the neutral position is. The first and the second fight usually take place at the neutral position. Yeah. So first and second. The barricade will be here, but they will push the bot towards the neutral position, maybe even touching your barricade, maybe not, depending on how the fight develops. Obviously, like who gets the first pick, when does the first pick happen. But what you can do is, so what you do, or what the team that wins should do, is either take position in here, which can be quite, which can be a little bit dangerous, because let's say your backline stays here. That means they are vulnerable for multiple directions, especially because Zombra can come from anywhere, the Tracer can technically come from everywhere. So you probably want to go back to this space here again. So you have decent cover if you go like back here. Also, yeah, there's so many here. Just wanted to check real quick. You go back to your original positioning, but you can be a little bit more aggressive about it. Like you don't need to go back into this space, for example, because that gives them all of this, which they do not have because you just won the first fight. So you can take some positioning, like you can take aggressive positioning here without getting punished to get there, because they're just coming all out of spawn. maybe here you can play, or here, and you can back up then, which is nice. But you need to be aware that there's only a mega in this room below this, so there's only a mega here, and you don't really want to fight in there. There's the mega, for anyone who didn't know. So yeah, you don't really want to give them too much space, but you have the opportunity to always back up, and that's the advantage you get for winning the first fight, apart from bot push, that you can decide where you want to set up kind of freely. It's not as much as an advantage because this space here is not as great as, for example, being in this room or having later the high ground control. Like, not as much of an advantage as having this high ground and the enemy being on this low ground, for example. That is a massive advantage because you can just like go away if you get low, but if they get low, they can't. They are in the open, and you also have a mini there, which is nice. Obviously, it only helps one person, but still. Yeah, so that is second fight. If you win the third fight, or if you win the second fight, or let's say, okay, one step at a time. First fight is here. You push up, barricade is here, depending on whoever wins. Then the team goes back. Second fight is also here. Then it depends again. If the team that won the first fight, so which has the barricade here, wins again, that means you get the checkpoint usually. So that means you get the checkpoint, you go there, and then depending on how fast the enemy is resetting and how many staggers you get, you can either look to like play a little bit more aggressive, go to here, or you like back up again. If the enemy is like really fast and like takes this high ground, then it kind of depends. Because now you have forward spawn, so even if you lose 1 or 2, it's not as bad as if you would lose 1 or 2 before you get the checkpoint, because people have to spawn like all the way on your side, right? Yeah. That kind of depends, but you always want to make sure that if you do fight on this low ground, which you usually want to avoid, you have the forward spawn activated. If you don't have the forward spawn activated, you go back, take this high ground, take the high ground over there. Just make sure that you have the better positioning. If the other team wins, so first fight here, goes back to second fight, also here, and then the team on this side here that lost the first fight wins, so that has a barricade here, they get to push now. And it's the same scenario as winning the first fight in this case. So the second fight kind of becomes the same scenario as the first fight. The enemy team pushes up until here, then they have to go back again. And then the third fight will also take place here. So yeah. I don't know if it's maybe I'm
No, makes sense
saying
for me.
it very complicatedly because I'm just like, okay, you win the first fight, you lose the first fight. It's just like you kind of get the grasp of it if you just play it, because it's just like depending on where the barricade ends up before the fight starts, that's kind of where you want to play. So that barricade ends up on the checkpoint, then the fight starts. You can play on low ground a little bit. Maybe you can even go into here, take the mega, and also you can also play like, then you can play maybe the side ground because you can have people just kind of chilling here or something like that. But yeah. For the last part, it's a little bit hard to tell what the right thing is to do because a lot of you see that in OWL, where a lot of the fighting happens on the first checkpoint for both teams, because you need to win the first to get it here. The second, then you get the checkpoint, and then you play on low ground, so some teams even fall back, and then even the third, and it doesn't matter who wins it, takes place in this neutral position. That's why a lot of times when you see OWL play this, they until like 2 minutes before the ending, everything just happens in this kind of box here.
It's because the robot is constantly moving. It's not a payload that is like standing still. It's like this thing constantly moves around.
Yeah.
So it's like not the same position you take. It's not the same place where the fight happens as like the payload. Let's say payload is like around the corner, like Kingsborough, already like around the corner, almost on the second checkpoint, and the fight is gonna happen there because the payload is there. But like it's not doesn't implant with push because this thing is always moving around
Yeah, and
as soon as someone
also,
touches it.
yeah. Also, usually on hybrid or escort maps, if you're the attacking team, and the same goes for control too,
Mm.
kind of. But if you're the attacking team on control, you obviously don't have the attacking team. But if you win a fight, you get progress.
Yeah.
That is if you're attacking on hybrid or escort, if you win the fight, you get progress, either point progress or payload progress. If you win the fight on control, you get percentage progress on the point. But
Mhm.
if you're on a push map,
Yeah, it
if you
doesn't.
win the fight, like let's say you are the like the first 2 fights maybe you get progress, but after the second fight, it's or the third fight maybe, let's say the barricade is here and the fight happens here. If you win the fight, that only means that you get into neutral position, because usually, because of also especially if you get the checkpoint as the team that comes from this side,
Mhm.
that means you get forward spawn and you will be in this position before they push this your barricade.
Yeah.
So winning the
Yeah.
fight doesn't necessarily give you progress.
Yeah, it doesn't. It
Yeah,
doesn't.
but losing
Especially.
the
Yeah.
fight is a little bit more not threatening, but punishing. Losing a fight is
Yeah.
more punishing
Definitely.
because the enemy team gets progress over you, kind of. I'm
Yeah,
not.
that's why nobody likes push. You
Yeah,
lose that shit so fast.
I said that in beta already, that it's very weird, and I don't really I'm not a great big fan of 2CP, although I think it's better than 2CP. But I'm not a great fan because, yeah, again, if you win the fight, it doesn't mean that you get progress. It doesn't, yeah. And
Yeah.
if you are behind, like, you can say the same thing like when you're on defense, right? If you win, it doesn't mean you get progress. It just means the clock burns. But if you're already behind
Yeah.
on push and you win a fight and you don't get progress, it's not the same as winning a fight as a defensive team on like a hybrid or escort
Control.
map. Yeah, or control as well, like hybrid escort
Mm.
control.
Mm.
Sorry, winning. No. If you win the fight on a as defensive team, you burn the clock. But if you win the fight here, you don't always get progress, which is meh for me. But that also like, it doesn't mean that the time stops, for example, because you won the fight. The time will
Yeah.
still go down, and the time is
Mm.
still against you as long as you're behind. You always want
Yeah.
to be in front. That is also one of the things that you see Overwatch League teams doing. But it's that very complicated idea, I would say. So it will probably take 2 to 3 hours to just explain that. It's basically,
Mhm.
you don't need to force the push if you're ahead. That's basically the idea behind that. So if you
Yeah,
are
that's what
ahead, you
Yeah.
don't need this. You don't need this extra push here. As long as
Yeah.
you are ahead, it's better to just burn the clock and go for better positioning than to extend your
Yeah.
lead. And
That's what
that
I.
is,
That's what I.
yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
complicated idea because it depends on the state, and sometimes you really need the like even more. Like sometimes it can be the like the reward for pushing your advantage more is higher in some scenarios than in others, where just burning the clock gives you more rewarding than pushing your advantage, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah,
But yeah, that's
that's what
very
I thought
complicated.
yesterday. We played push. We pushed it very far, and we literally just burnt the clock and we won.
Yeah.
Because we pushed it further, and it was like a retake. They took the robot, then we took it back, then they took the robot again, and then it was overtime, and they had to like push robot all the way almost to the third checkpoint. And I was like, guys, just hold them there. We just need to like get it till overtime and kill them with all our ults, and we won because we
Yeah.
pushed it farther than they did. So we don't need to do anything fancy, like need to push it to the third
Yeah.
checkpoint just to win.
Yeah,
Sometimes you just gotta like play for better position and hold that angle
yeah.
or hold that position.
That's what I meant with sometimes it's more advantage, like the reward you get is for pushing your advantages even higher. Sometimes, not
Mm.
always. So that goes
Yeah, not
against
always,
this.
yeah.
That goes against this rule is when OT comes around. So it kind of depends a little bit on the map, on what compositions you're playing. I don't want to go too deep into it right now, but let's say you have the bot, like the bot is on the side of the team that is losing right now, so they are losing, this team is winning. And then they have to go like push the bot, even if it's goes fast, like
Yeah,
without the
yeah.
barricade. That still
Mm.
means, like, let's say the barricade is like here, and they need to get it up to like there, so not all the way through. That still
Mhm.
means they need, like, you can probably force a fight right before they push the barricade, like somewhere around here, that they have to
Mhm.
win. So they need to probably overcommit ults, because if they lose the game. But if you lose, you just have
Yeah.
another. You will probably have another opportunity before the bot pushes with the barricade up until here, because it takes longer. So that's why sometimes pushing your advantage right before overtime comes, you might want to go for less advantage positioning without using ults even. Although it's likely
Mhm.
that you're gonna lose it, if you get a couple more meters on the bot, that still means right before overtime comes around. But again, it's a little bit complicated. It's just a general thing. Right before overtime comes, if you are in the lead, trying to push the bot without ults, but even if you're in this disadvantaged positioning, like on the low ground, can still
Yeah.
win you the game overall, because that means that the enemy team has more way they need to cover without losing one fight. That makes sense. So they need to win more
Yeah.
fights in a row in order to win.
Yeah.
If they lose once,
Yeah.
they lose.
Yeah,
And
they lose.
that's the reason that it's sometimes more advantageous to commit to a disadvantaged fight, just because it might give you a really good reward. But yeah,
Mm. How many minutes do you have on push? I feel like it's like, I don't know,
8, I think it
7,
was. I think
8?
it was. I don't know. It was something. Then they reduced it. I'm pretty sure. I think it
Because
was
like
9 at the beginning or 7 at the
I think
beginning, and
it's
they.
10.
Is
it's
it 10?
10.
Yeah, 10.
I was like, this is already going for so long. I was looking at the clock and it was like 6 minutes. I
Yeah.
was like, the fuck is that? Why is that so long? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it's also like risky just playing for. I mean, it can be risky just playing for time, you know, like for burning time if it goes so long, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it depends probably how the enemy is like playing that map or how the enemy is playing on that map, and yeah, and how are you playing on that map, I think.
Yeah. It also depends on what comms you're playing, as I said.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I just want to show you is that all the maps is very similar.
Mm,
It's somewhat similar. So on this first, it's a little bit different. So this is actually, I really like that the first 2 push maps they introduced are very different from each other, and then I introduced the third one, and it was just a mixture of the first ones. But yeah, so you have the same thing here. There's not a very advantageous positioning in here, so because of these 2 things, I think that is good, because otherwise people would just play here and would get infinite
yeah.
value. So I actually like
Mm,
this, but that also means that people will probably like fight over all of these. There's so much cover here. That's why Brawl's also kind of good, because you can just kind of go from cover to cover and all that stuff. So you see a lot of like Zarya been played here, not so much dive, because of yeah, because there are so many walls, dive can be quite hard, especially first fight. And winning the first fight, maybe you could have seen already, is pretty good. Winning the first fight. Anyway, so first fight usually happens inside this somewhere here. Usually like between these. Usually one team plays behind this, one team plays behind this, or something like that. And then as soon as someone gets the advantage, they push up. Maybe take this as cover. That's also quite nice, because there's not many angles from here. As Brawl, for example, you can take that. Yeah, if you have a little advantage. Then first fight, first time you push the bot, it's even harder here to push it towards the first checkpoint, just because it's literally surrounded by high ground. You have to push through or underneath the high ground to actually get it to here, and every time the enemy wins from here, you have to push the bot through here again and again and again. Every time the enemy team manages to push you back. But yeah. Usually, just going over this real quick, bot usually goes like somewhere in this area after the first fight. So the winning team is the one on the opposite. Doesn't really matter if it's you or not. If you push it until this point, usually the winning team goes back into neutral position, making sure that the bot will probably be around this area. This time, you can have like a flanker, like a Zumbra, for example, even like be here, scout them, and then making like let them walk into a trap a little bit. So doing that will also give you that advantage. And I think there are minis there, yeah. Also, this just heard the like cheers from the crowd there. I've noticed that there's actually something going on in there. But yeah, sorry. So yeah, you fall back here, and then depending on who wins, let's say the team that won the first fight won, pushes. Sometimes it doesn't happen this time that you push it all to the next checkpoint, just because you can't push it as easily because there's so much high ground now. So you have to push underneath the high ground, which means on both sides you're susceptible, or like you're in danger of people just sitting on high ground nading your backline. Maybe someone can eat. This is a natural flank as well. Like if you're pushing the bot, you kind of need to take the high ground. Whoever is on the bot will not be able to see what's going on the high ground. So usually this map plays even slower. So even if you win 2 fights in a row, that doesn't mean that you get the checkpoint. And a little bit similar to New Queen Street, because sometimes that happens. That also doesn't happen there, but even more so here because the defenders have such a basically a fortress here, which is yeah, kind of crazy. So usually you need to win 3 fights in a row or something like that in the beginning to actually get the point. And yeah, if you have this, then it's again hard to push it around here because usually your team wants to hold this bridge, and you don't really have the sidelines if anyone is pushing card there. Usually you don't want to have anyone like pushing it while the fight is going anyway. That's why it is also very it happens to work very well with just going into neutral every time, because that way you don't give the enemy advantage positioning. Like they can't shoot from here, like somewhat maybe, but that's why you don't really want to play inside here because of this high ground. So you just go back, and then they can't really take any advantage of high grounds. If someone manages to go to here without you punishing them, then good for them. But usually you will see if someone goes for this high ground because there will only be 4 players and or something like that. But yeah, so playing a little bit, not trying to force this checkpoint too much, unless you have a very good positioning. And if the fight breaks out, maybe like a D.Va can push, but usually your D.Va doesn't want to be pushing because then you don't have a tank. But yeah, this point is a little bit more awkward. So going into neutral more often than not is probably the safer bet. And yeah, the only thing that you need to remember is that if you let them push into neutral, that means if you do lose a fight, that gives them progress right away, right? You fight a little bit further, like let's say here, somewhere that maybe gives them the high ground, but if they win the fight, it doesn't give them the push right away. It takes them like 5-6 seconds or whatever. So because that's when something that we haven't talked about yet at all comes into place, which is ults. We haven't really talked about ults because the Queen Street kind of plays very similarly with or without ults. Obviously, you can push your advantage. Like, if you are on a slight disadvantage positioning-wise, if the enemy has high ground or something like that, you can kind of even that out with ults, but you need to keep in mind you do build up ult advantage to if you win like the first 2 fights, but and then if you decide to fight the 3rd fight with ult advantage but worse positioning, you might win it, but that also means you need to commit more ults, right? So it kind of works against your ult economy a little bit. So when you are on defense, usually you want to use the advantage positioning. Let's go over this in a bit. I just want to talk over primarily if you win the first 2 fights, if you have the advantage, you get the ult advantage, and you want to be like, okay, you know what? We just want to unlock this checkpoint, maybe get some progress above the hill. So if we just win the next team fight, very easy, like with our ults, and they don't have ults because you won the first 2 fights. Like if you are 100% sure you have the ult advantage, then you can force a fight you would be disadvantages in with your ults, win the fight, and then take more of the card push, and then you need to be aware. Next fight, they probably have ults. We don't have ults because we permitted a little bit more, so that means we're probably gonna lose this. But we got the bot pushed up more, if that is your goal. Otherwise, if you keep going into neutral and the bot is somewhere around here, that means that you got very nice push, like somewhere underneath the bridge, somewhere like here maybe. It's going to be hard for the enemy to get that in the same position if you keep your ult advantage. Like if you keep going back into neutral, if you keep using 2 ults per fight, or like, you know, don't overcommit ults basically. If you keep doing that, it's going to be very hard for the enemy team to build up an ult advantage while also getting progress on the card. That's why winning the first fight can be very, very important, because it gives you the ult, or the first 2 fights, it gives you the ult advantage in the beginning, and then you can decide to either get more progress on the card with your ult advantage, or on the barricade. I should stop calling it card. On the barricade, you can either get more progress on that, or you can go into neutral, and with the ult advantage that you have, and especially with the progress advantage, because the enemy team, if you won the first 2 fights, doesn't have any progress. With the barricade advantage that you have, and the ult being either up for you or even, so you should avoid being down on ults if you are not winning the first 2 fights, if that makes sense. I don't know. You want to be up in one of those 2 things, and then you can work with that, if that makes sense. If you have ult advantage, and you have the barricade pushed up, which is the case in the first 2 fights, then that means you can decide what you want to do. Do we want to use ults to keep progressing the barricade, or do we want to keep our ult advantage and force them to take, like, if they want to break that, they either need to invest all their ults, like, let's say they need to use 4 ults and you only use 2. That means they used a lot of ults, and then they probably get barricade progress. But that also means that you have ult advantage, which means that if you go back into neutral, if they are smart, then you win the fight. If they don't go into neutral and just fight here, then you, adding towards ult advantage, you also have positioning advantage, and then you also win the fight, hopefully. I don't know, I'm going very deep into this, very complicated, I'm talking a lot, I know that. So I just want to make sure if everyone is following, if there are any
Yeah,
questions.
I could follow, yeah. So neutral position is this long hallway, right?
Yeah.
Where the bot is it always where the bot is like at the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure if everyone is calling it that, but I'm calling it that, because you have, usually when you start the map, you have a neutral fight where you have no ults. That's what you called it in Overwatch 1.
Yeah.
And I'm just calling this, basically what you see in the screen right now, is, for me, is neutral position.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can also, obviously, you can also use that.
And if the enemy is like respawning, let's say we won first point, we push the barricade, and the enemy is respawning, do they always have to go through this hallway to get to the high ground? Or is there like another way to get to this high ground that we're looking right now?
This high ground.
Yeah.
I mean, they can just come from the spawn and just take this, and then, like, so you are spawning on the site, right? You're spawning here.
Mhm.
And the enemy is spawning like over there.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Okay. I
and
get it now.
then if they come out of spawn, they can just take this high ground, and they can also take this. And the problem is, if you're the barricade will not push further than this from experience and from all the owl and scrims and rank. Every time after the first fight, the barricade will be here in the screen. So that means that someone will be on this and on a disadvantaged positioning. So even if it's just one, let's say a tracer, that means that she's not, like, you kind of have, because it's 5v5 now, you kind of need to have everyone kind of fighting at the same time.
Yeah.
And the problem is, if you do commit to this high ground, which you technically, it would be like maybe an opportunity, a possibility to, okay, we leave the spot here and just go forward, take this high ground, and then the enemy can't do anything, right? But if they have the Sombra, a tracer, anyone, they can just sneak up onto the bot, right? And because the bot moves very fast, they can get it into neutral very fast. And if your team doesn't respond quickly enough, then they will have to fight on 2 fronts. Like, someone is pushing card, they need to stop it, but they are also coming from from spawn. So if we have this positioning, we all need to drop anyway, because if someone pushes the cart, we can't
Yeah.
contest both the bot and the high ground at the same time. If we do,
Yeah.
then if we have one on the bot and the 4 on high ground, then they will just win the fight on high ground. 4v5.
Yeah.
Second fight, no
Yeah.
one has ults yet because of OW2. They will just win the fight
Mm.
on top. If we all
You
fall
get
back,
hard staggered even,
yeah,
maybe.
if we do decide to, okay, we all go to the bot because there's someone on bot, and then, well, that means that we're all on low ground, and then they have the high ground.
Mm.
That's the original
Yeah,
problem that I
yeah.
was talking about,
Yeah.
right? And so
The position
again,
is shit then. Yeah.
exactly. And that's the reason after the first, like, if you can only push it up until here, someone obviously scouts. And again, we can go forward, but I'm always talking about, okay, the enemy team is not stupid and not feeding, you know? So if the enemy is like stupid and someone just dies right in front because they just walk out of spawn, maybe you
Yeah.
even have a Widow or Sojourn who just gets a lucky pick in the start, like right out of spawn, then yeah,
Mm.
just keep pushing the bot, and you just can maybe even push it until under the bridge.
Mm.
But usually, if the enemy team comes out of spawn, doesn't get picked off, like there's also left side door, for example, that it's very hard to like get picks from, because people can just like walk here, and then they
And
also
use
can
this.
like, yeah, and then they
Uh,
can get out of spawn without getting picked. And usually, it's very unlikely that people will just die right away, right?
yeah. So you could like go up to this one high ground on the left side from my perspective. You can like play there a little bit, and when you
Yeah.
see like okay, they're like coming further and further
Yeah.
back
They're
off
coming
to
out of spawn.
yeah, they're coming out of spawn, and we don't get a pick fast enough, so we go back to the neutral position, we play there, and yeah, second fight is
Yeah.
second fight is gonna start, and like who takes over
Yeah, exactly.
pushes the robot further. And
Yeah.
then if you get it like to the second checkpoint, or like the first checkpoint, right? You could take the high ground from like from their spawn perspective, I guess, and like play there. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit awkward, as I said. That's why, again, similar to New Queen Street, a lot of the fighting happens between the first checkpoints. You don't see a lot of fighting on the rest, because, especially on this map, if you get the checkpoint, that's great.
Yeah.
But again, you have to like go away from the checkpoint in order to play 5v5, and someone could technically
yeah.
like go onto the bot as well, right? Also, if you don't get the checkpoint, someone can also contest it from up here. I don't know if you noticed, but someone can stay on this
didn't know.
edge and contest
It's
it when the bot is
contested?
like here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Obviously,
yeah,
like
the
if
bot is
it's
probably
a
very
tank, yeah. Obviously, if it's a tank, then the tank is not really fighting. You have the high ground, right? So
tall.
it's a little bit tricky, and there's probably a lot of stuff that people and I haven't figured out yet, like strategies and shit. But it seems to be very good to go into a neutral position pretty often, unless you are 100% sure that you will have the upper hand positioning wise in the next fight.
So if you don't have the push advantage, so
Yeah.
it's better like to stick maybe to that position on the high ground when you got like the first checkpoint, and
Yeah.
push it as far as you can.
Yeah, I would
And
say
reset fast.
staying on this first high ground is better. Like, is what you want to do if the bot is on this slope, because that way your supports can maybe stay on the high ground while still having LOS. Like, can they contest and have LOS, and they can back up, like, I don't know, to this mini, for example, and stuff. But you need to keep in mind it's still like quite a distance, right? So flankers and divers can
Yeah,
still
they
go
can
there,
like come
so.
from behind and shit. So
Yeah, usually,
yeah.
let's say you win a fight. Okay. Somehow the bot ends up here. You win a fight, and the enemy does not come out of spawn before you push the bot around. That's when you can take this, kind of. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe if the bot is in this U-turn, I think you can take aggressive positioning, because if someone wants to back cap, or like, wants
can
to take
just
it
jump
back,
off.
you can just you can also just stay on the
Just
ledge
stand
here.
there.
Yeah, and then you contest that. So you can do both at this on this specific high ground. It can be a little bit dangerous, but yeah. Okay. The last thing, because I don't want to talk about the new map, because we're already done going for 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
Is what if you are on the losing end of this? Because we mostly talked about what will you do when you win, when you're on the winning side. So let's say you lose the first fight, and you also lose the second. Because if you lose the first and win the second, both teams have the same. The ults will be very similar. They will be like you will have probably some ults and all that stuff. And both teams will probably fight in neutral as well. So you lose both the first and second fight. So what can you do to counter this strategy that I earlier said of you have ult advantage, and then you can decide whether you want to push the barricade advantage, or if you just want to keep your ult advantage while also keeping the semi positioning advantage, right? So you don't really need okay, you win 2 fights, you have ult advantage and all that stuff, so you don't need to push the barricade further. You just need to make sure the enemy doesn't push it, and you can do that by
the clock.
yeah, you can burn the clock while going into neutral position using only 2 of your ults, and if the enemy overcommits their ults, that means that usually you can use this position here to burn down the clock again. So if they want to push the barricade by force, they need to stay on it here. But then you can use the positioning advantage and probably the ult advantage that you get from winning the first 2 fights. So that's kind of a vicious cycle, right? So it's gonna be very hard if the enemy plays it very well. It's gonna be very hard to break this. You need to come up with individual plays. You need to come up with ult combos specifically, so you can go for like maybe graph arrogance, graph pulses, get very like you have to win a fight without them, and then you need to win the next fight where the enemy wants to push you back again. You need to win this the second, so you don't if they how to say. So the enemy has barricade advantage, so it's like somewhere here, and you haven't pushed it yet. So they will probably go into neutral position and want to win the fight in the neutral. So what you need to do is you need to make sure you win the fight in the neutral, and to do that, you need some kind of ultimate, like heavy ultimate combos, something like that to get the start.
Ultimate.
Yeah, individual plays. That's the other part. But that way, if you use that in the neutral, that means that you will not have it when you are getting close to the barricade, right? Because the enemy won 2 fights, they have it pushed further. So that's when you because you won the fight in the neutral with your ult advantage, with the big combo, the big individual play, whatever. I'm excluding individual plays because they can always if there's a clutch in the fight, then that can always throw the best strategy upside down. But that means they will probably win the next fight. So what you can do is can go into neutral and hope that you will get another big ultimate online, like EMP or something like that. Or you just need to make sure that you win the fight when they get close. So the first fight you need to win when you're down, or you haven't pushed the card at all. So the first fight is you need to win the fight in the neutral.
Yeah.
That's the one that you need to win to make sure that you make progress on it. The next time it gets a little bit harder, because the next time if you win the fight in a neutral, that doesn't necessarily mean that you get the bot all the way to where they have it, but you can try it, because they fell back to the neutral in the first place if they were smart, and they won the second fight originally also in the neutral. So what you want to do is you want to win the fights in the neutral. That's your primary goal. So you can kind of stack up your ultimates specifically for that fight. It can be quite dangerous if they push it over the checkpoint, but it's risky, but you kind of have to go for risks because you're already kind of down. The other part is it's a little bit kind of a baiting, because they have ult advantage, so you kind of have to hope they make mistakes. Every team makes mistakes, so you have to force mistakes from them by putting more pressure on their backline, like as for example your Tracer goes a little bit more aggressive, tries to go for a pick, something like that. You go for
like distracting the backline, or even
something that will make them use more ults than they should, in which case you can capitalize on that and take the ult advantage into your favor, and then push the barricade further than them. and then once you have, so the primary goal, if you are down, is to just push it further than the enemy. If once you've pushed it further than the enemy, and you're like, okay, they're kind of respawning soon, you can go for maybe 1-2 more meters, but then you all just like go back, and then you do the same thing. Like now you're in front of the barricade, and it depends on who has more ults and stuff. So let's say there's a trick here. I think. I mean, no, I haven't played this game as much, so that I can be like, this works 100% of the time. But if both barricades are around this area, so we are very deep into the game. Both barricades are somewhere around this area. You know that that you have similar ults, maybe they even have the advantage, but you really want to push it. So what you can do is you just put the person, someone on cart at like maybe a tracer, and then the rest just stalls them as long as possible in this area. And then you just try to get as much push as possible. You're probably gonna lose the fight because it's a 4v5, but you get as much progress on the cart, and then if that only works if it's pushed probably like very close to the barricade. So if it ends up like very close to the checkpoint, which kind of happens more than you think, but yeah, it's ending up somewhere in this area. That means even with the bot being that fast, the next fight is probably gonna happen around neutral position.
Yeah.
So
It's always going to be like there.
it's gonna be risky because if you you kind of give up this high ground. So usually what you want to do is you can even let them push the bot further. If you're ahead, you can usually like let them push it further and then take the high ground. But yeah.
I was about to ask that. So let's say we take the second fight, or like even the third fight, in neutral position. They use ults, and we lose like one person, or like we don't lose a person. Is it like bad to like back off and take the high ground position?
If they use ults, you can just back up, but it's gonna be a little bit hard because you see that the distance is quite large. So to get on this high ground, some people can climb up, but your backline needs to go all the way here and then take the stairs with no cover to go onto this high ground. So yeah, so, I mean, it can work if you're like, okay, they lost 2 people, you lost 3, but you have people alive that can peel for each other, then yeah, you can take this high ground and make sure that the bot doesn't push further. So if it's a very scrappy fight, so yeah, we have talked about a lot of like clean fights. So one team wins, the other team loses. But a lot of the times there will be, not everyone will like win be alive, right? So if it's like deep into the game and the barricades are like there and they just want to push the bot somewhere around to the barricade, then if you have
then definitely
like
take
two,
that position,
if it's like
right?
a 2v3 and you have people that can peel for each other, you can take like this high ground. Make sure that they just don't get as much push on the bot as possible. That also means like, especially if you are down and you can make them not push it that far, that also means that you can take an earlier fight in the neutral position because it doesn't take as long to get it back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, making sure that the bot is contested, even like if you lose the fight in a position where the bot is like in any position really, you just want to die on the bot rather than backing off and dying late. On
It's
this
just like
in this
dying
mode,
on
even
point,
more.
dying on
Yeah.
card, right?
Well, I think on push it's maybe even a little bit more like it's even more important.
Meaningful. Yeah.
Because it means that it just means that they can only push the bot from like this position, and the last person dies also when it's here. So the last person dying on the bot is very nice because that means that the last person, it doesn't matter how many when they died, if it's like if they take 2 seconds or 4 seconds or half a second, they will always rejoin the fight when the bot is in the same spot, right? Because they died last. But yeah.
Yeah.
I know that was a lot. It also took way longer than I wanted to, but since you asked about push, I thought I talk a little bit more about this.
I have no clue. Like I have no clue how to position, what the best thing to do, because you're so lost when you play this game mode that nobody really knows what to do. And it's like it makes sense. It makes sense to play it like you said it. because this thing is not gonna like stand still.
Yeah.
And does it like it's not gonna like move away if the enemy touches it or like is near it. Because this thing is mobile. It's like always going back and forth and shit. So it's not like payload. That's why.
Yeah. Is this anyone else or you have any questions about anything?
No, it's like pretty clear. Take high ground as much as you can if it's
Possible?
if it's possible.
Feel the
Neutral
same.
position, very important to take for fights. And oh, there's another thing. Is it not smart to use ults to let's say Tracer's on card and you're holding them a little bit in the spawn way,
Yeah.
and using ults till you get it to the first checkpoint. Is it like
I
bad to
mean,
do that?
you can do that, but you need to make sure that it works. I mean,
Yeah.
tracer pools, you can kind of chuck that out, but yeah, it kind of depends, obviously. Like, if the bot is like here, and you are sure that you have a fight winning combo, and you're sure that you're gonna win it, or make them stagger long enough so that you get the checkpoint or whatever, that can work, but you need to be aware. Like, you can kind of only do that when you have the ult advantage. That's what I meant earlier. Because if you
Yeah.
use your
Yeah.
ults and then they use their ults and then they win the fight, then you use your ults, and I mean, you still have the barricade advantage, but yeah, you're still fighting a 4v5, right? So it's similar to escorts. You have someone on cart and your team is in an advantage position. Sometimes it works to just like ult them to just get like one fight scenario on the escort map, just to like pick two people off. Like, if you can definitely get their backline, for example, that's basically a one fight. If the enemy uses ult, they need to be kind of lucky or get like a huge ult. You know, like they have to make huge individual plays to counter that. But yeah, it can
Alright,
work.
yeah.
It's similar. It's a similar thing to like an escort map in that sense. But yeah, it can be risky if you think, like, if you know the enemy have ults, then yeah, it can be risky because yeah, if you are behind and you want to get the checkpoint, it's probably the best thing to do. If you are ahead, you can decide. You can either go for that play, like kill them before they can engage, and someone just pushes the barricade until the checkpoint. If you're behind, that's probably the best play. If you're ahead, you can either do that, or you can say, okay, we do that, but in a neutral position. And it's a same thing to what we kind of discussed later on. It's like, if you do it here, yes, you burn some time. Yes, you get some card progress or some barricade progress. But if you do it in a neutral, between those fights, there's a little bit of time. And then if you do it in a neutral, you're even wasting more of their time. And you can push the card back again. But yeah, again, if you do it in a neutral and you do lose the fight because they catch you off guard, then the punishment is higher. So
Yeah.
you need to make sure it works in both. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's it for me actually. There are no questions anymore.
All right. Does it just go over there and then spawns here? It does.
I don't know, it's kind of teleporting here.
Yeah. Anyone else? Or yeah.
No,
Any
I think you were
comments?
very clear.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna